a worry that I would have about the Nostr ecosystem developing is that it doesn't sufficiently plug into economic incentives and then dies or gets compromised through someone building, as I said earlier, a Nostr.io, right? Like sign up for your Nostr account here. We'll keep the keys for you. Awesome messaging app. Like we added emojis, and you've just recapitulated now and built the same old central social media tools. And you might say that this is better because look, it's an open protocol behind the scenes. And well, okay, cool, but like the fact that Nostr is an open protocol, I don't think is what's so compelling about it. It's the idea that it's adjacent through community, through design, through individuals to Bitcoin and to the Lightning Network. And it's not sufficiently well connected yet, but it's only through a deeper connection to real economic incentives that we can solve those problems, like making Nostr scale to 1 billion concurrent users. That's just a challenging technology problem. You need a lot of servers to be able to do that. I don't know if you've heard of like the C10K problem, but it's like a rule of thumb for web servers, at least it used to be. I'm showing my age here. Like you want to support 10,000 users, you're going to need at least one web server. Like you want 20,000 users, you're going to need two now. So there's a certain degree of just like as the more number of active users in the platform increases, you just need more endpoints to like talk to them to serve them data. How do we make sure the Nostr network continues to scale with potential demand without, you know, without scaling using the tried and true method of getting VC dollars to go buy Amazon resources and expose them to end users, right? That will work, but it will also fail long term. So how do we get Nostr to scale without that, like to scale through just direct market action? Like people got to get paid to run Nostr relays. They got to get paid to index Nostr messages and to serve queries against those indices. They got to get paid to create reputational systems within Nostr so you can find the right people. They got to create directories so you can browse Nostr public and private keys. And none of these should be happening in a centralized way. Somehow, even the assembling of the directory has to be something that's distributed. And this to me is an important issue in the layering problem because it's really the issue of like software design and boundaries, right? Like when there's a famous story of like when Bitcoin was first created, the Bitcoin client, it had like this putative like marketplace and like in theory you could like list stuff for sale directly through Bitcoin and all that was shut down because like God bless Satoshi, that wasn't good software engineering. I don't think Satoshi was a software engineer, and that's okay. They were a brilliant original thinker. It took a lot of software engineers to come into Bitcoin subsequently and shut down bad ideas like that. And I think if Nostr grows with bad boundaries and people start to put the wrong things into it, and it's going to fail. If conversely, it finds the right API connections to layers below it and adjacent to it, it may succeed. So and maybe examples there are, I don't think it's, for example, Nostr's job to optimize the delivery of bytes across a telecommunications network and to incentivize that properly. That's a Lightning Network concern. The Lightning Network is, as we said, a kind of a private monetized internet. Nostr shouldn't have to solve routing issues. It might wind up, this is often what happens, I think, when you're synthesizing systems. Someone from the Nostr team working on Nostr might make significant contributions to routing in Lightning because they were trying to make Nostr better. So in this sense, things at higher layers create demand pull for things at lower layers. I think Bitcoin became better because people wanted to build a Lightning Network. I think that's where SegWit comes from. It's a great solution to transaction malleability as well as an upgrade for a layer one in meaningful ways. And we wouldn't have SegWit in the way that we had it if we hadn't been thinking about the Lightning Network at some level at the same time. Because the Lightning Network doesn't work without SegWit. Transaction malleability is a killer. Similarly here, like if we want to build Nostr, we need Lightning to do things for us. And so the existence of Nostr as an ambition or the notion that we would have applications that work like Nostr, doesn't have to be Nostr, obviously, it could be anything like that. The notion that there's an application set of concerns and that they want to push things like routing and connectivity and bandwidth and stuff into a Lightning layer, and they want to handle things like, well, I know you tell me how to get to data. I'll tell you what data I want. I want this Nostr message with this ID or whatever it is. Like that is the concern of the application layer. Again, this may bleed a little bit in the short term as people try to solve problems just in their own project as compared to trying to do it through a layered model, but that's just growing pains. Like eventually it has to look like something that's become separated in meaningfully distinct layers that solve different kinds of problems, right? Bitcoin's only problem that it has to solve is keeping the money like safe and working. Lightning's problem is liquidity, routing, bandwidth, telecom. Nostr's problem is discoverability, searching, like feed generation. Like in some sense, these are subcomponents of what a thing like Twitter does. And I think that's part of what we will expect to see as these layers develop is you take a company like a Twitter or an Uber or something that does a very complex service. And instead of just building Uber as a smart contract or building Twitter as a smart contract, which would sort of be the ETH approach to this, I think, to a degree, it's like you break it up into all the submarkets. Like there should be a market for just moving data on the internet. That's Lightning. There should be a market for posting a file that you want to be able to retrieve later and being able to have guarantees that it will be around later for you to retrieve it. That's content delivery. That's CDN. That's a requirement to be able to publish software on the internet. Those things are separate, and those have to be separate layers that solve and tackle those problems. Building something that sort of miscegenates all this junk together and tries to just build Twitter as like a project using Bitcoin, I think fails. Like you need to first build all those subsequent layers. Like, and then what's cool about that is like, then those services, it's like inside out almost, right? Like right now, if you go to Twitter, Facebook, Reddit, whatever, go to a bunch of social media networks, they all have their own internal tools for like creating search indices and serving search requests, creating feeds and curating what goes into your feed. There isn't, for example, a cross social media search indexing service that just all social media posts go into and then you serve search requests out of that. Because it doesn't make sense. Who would build that? Who's going to make money from that? Like the individual company has to build a siloed version of that thing. And okay, to a degree, there are cross-functional search things that are designed for ad tech and whatever else, but that's not surface to the end user. In a marketplace-driven version of this, like the way you build an app is you plug into a search indexing service, you plug into a CDN service, you plug into a different kind of thing, and together they sort of implement your app. It's sort of an inside-out approach to software engineering. Instead of a company and project having internal versions of all these common functions, those functions are just marketplace functions. And that your app or protocol is just leveraging existing marketplaces for searching, for search indexing and querying, for data retrieval, for running compute cycles, like something like a feed, for example. This is a great example of what is a feed actually. It's an algorithm, right? You take a point in the network and you look at who they follow and who follows them and all the content that they created. And you have an algorithm that sorts and filters and then says, here's the 100 next tweets we're going to show you. Right. That kind of a curation algorithm is a generic thing you might want to apply to other kinds of content. And the idea that Twitter and Facebook and all these companies separately create these feeds, which, by the way, are designed to make them money, not to give you the content you really want. I just love the idea of inverting that, and we pay someone to just build feeds for us. And that's not the same entity that's responsible for hosting the tweets or whatever. It's not the same marketplace that's responsible for search and indexing. It's just a special thing that we pay for. It's the same kind of code. It's the same math and the same algorithms that are being run in order to create feeds, but we're just more in direct control of them because we're not purchasing them from a company in a non-monetized way. We're just directly purchasing them from a market that does feed generation. But something like feed generation is so hard because feed generation requires looking up data, running code, like, munging a bunch of stuff together and then representing it. This is an application. So to run an application like that on a cloud that's run by no one, right, requires all sorts of underlying services. I've got to be able to publish assets into this cloud and retrieve them. I've got to be able to specify an algorithm, test it, and then know that it'll run at scale, and my users plug into requesting that algorithm be run for them on their data. None of those things exist yet. So we can't just go out and replicate Twitter today on top of Bitcoin. We first have to go build all those layers. And inevitably, if you think about those more complex layers, you actually just back into, well, really, what we just need is the ability to send each other bytes on the internet, like for sats. And now you're back into the Lightning Network. And you can't really even do that because you can't really even send sats efficiently, like at the scale that we would need. And so it really just comes back down to like the core capability of a Lightning Network as a payments routing infrastructure has to get orders of magnitude better before the next layer really makes sense. But that doesn't mean we're not going to start working on the next layer. We already have. And understanding the constraints that we would be operating under in that next layer actually helps us shape how we feel a Lightning Network should evolve and grow today.